And are there lessons that you learned in your Balkans experience in particular about how to make that relationship work better? Maybe even where the limits are.
Well, first of all, working with Sadako Okada was a pleasure, and it wasn't difficult. And the reason was she had very clear views, very clear standards. She had a good, strong organization, and they were always easy to reach and coordinate with. And her people were on the ground, and they were experienced, and they were often more knowledgeable than the military people who had just come into the theater. Difficulty came in that there are other non-governmental organizations than the UNHCR. So as we were, the most difficult of all the situations was we were running the bombing in Kosovo, and we had some non-governmental organizations who insisted on delivering relief supplies in the middle of bombing runs. We couldn't contact them. We certainly were not going to tell them in advance where the targets were. We often didn't know where the targets were at my level because they were targets of opportunity on Serb forces, and these were trucks moving on the road, and they weren't marked, and no one knew who was in these trucks. So ultimately, their movement stopped what most of the Europeans wanted us to do, which was to take more direct action against ethnic cleansing.
So how do you at the same time not alert them, but alert them? In other words, try to get them not to do certain things on a given day.
You can't, because the organizations, not the UNHCR, but other non-governmental organizations, they all operate on their own drumbeat. And so it was perfectly reasonable for these, I think this was a Greek non-governmental organization, they never supported the fact that we were going to take military action against the Serbs anyway. And there was a certain mindset that some of them had that they would be able to forestall our military action by delivering humanitarian supplies, and they were successful in doing so. And so we had to operate around that. It's one more factor of difficulty and clutter on the battlefield. It's one more reason why the application of force can't be done from 20,000 feet effectively in many situations. You've got to have other options. You can't rely on only a single dimension to apply extreme pressure.
Είναι το τελευταίο σπίτι του χωριού Γκαντίμε στο νότιο Κόσοβο. Εδώ και 8 μήνες στο κατόφλι του περνούν μόνο ο γιατρός της KFOR και οι στρατιώτες της νατοικής δύναμης που αλλάζουν φρουρά κάθε 24 ώρες. Έλληνες. 6 τον αριθμό μένουν σε μια σκηνή σε μια γωνιά της χιονισμένης αυλής. Οποιοσδήποτε άλλος επιχειρήσει να περάσει την παλιά ξύλινη αυλόπορτα δεν θα είναι για καλό. Εμείς είμαστε η μόνη εξαίρεση.
Moj brat mora da bega sa familiju. A mama, ona nije mogla da bega i kaže, sedi, kaže, kod mene. Samo stala kod nju posle da mu biju hteli. I nju dosta gubrili bila, dosta. A Parine 100 puta. Mnogo imam da pričam, ali mi se maknulo s pamet. Celo leto smo plakali. Plači, kukaj. Niko neće da ne obrani. Niko.
Η Τσβέτα και η 90χρονη μητέρα της δεν ακολούθησαν τους υπόλοιπους Σέρβους κατοίκους του χωριού στη μεγάλη έξοδο. Την απόφασή τους να παραμείνουν την πλήρωναν καθημερινά, μέχρι τη στιγμή που η KFOR αποφάσισε να εγκαταστήσει φρουρά στο σπίτι τους.
Έχουν δεχτεί πολλές επιθέσεις, ειδικά οι μεγάλοι τις έχουν σπάσει τη λεκάνη, την έχουν ρίξει πάνω στη σόμπα, την έχουν κάψει. Αλλά παρόλα αυτά πολεμάνε εδώ πέρα και δεν θέλουν δηλαδή να φύγουν από το μέρος τους που μεγάλωσαν.
Svi su mi mene djeca.
Ko je najbolje?
Sve su za mene bolje. Svi su bolji. Ako mi dalo da jem, će živim, ako ne, nema.
Αυτό είναι εμπειρία ζωής για μένα, θα έλεγα. Το να έρθεις σε ένα τέτοιο χώρο νύχτα, να δεις δύο ανήμπορες γυναίκες με προβλήματα, να μην μπορούν να βγουν καθόλου έξω από το σπίτι τους, να μην έχουν να φάνε, να μην έχουν να ντυθούν και να αντιμετωπίζουν και πρόβλημα υγείας, για μένα αυτό πιστεύω θα μείνει για πάντα στο μυαλό μου.
Τέτοιο σχολικό λεωφορείο με περισσότερους στρατιώτες επιβάτες από ότι παιδιά μόνο στο Κωσυφοπαίδιο μπορεί να συναντήσει κανείς. Με συνοδεία Βρετανών της ΚΕΙΦΟΡ, οι μαθητές βγαίνουν από τα σπίτια τους στην Πρίστινα και επιβιβάζονται στο πούλμαν. Από εκεί και πέρα, τον έλεγχο και την προστασία τους έχουν οι Έλληνες της Νατοικής δύναμης. Τα παιδιά είναι σερβόπουλα. Σέρβικο σχολείο στην πόλη δεν υπάρχει πια. Το μόνο που λειτουργεί σε σχετικά κοντινή απόσταση, 20 χιλιόμετρα, είναι αυτό στο χωριό Λάπλje.
Teško je zbog što su ušli žiptari, ne daju nam da izađemo u grad da se igramo sa decom. Nije ko pre. Sada je mnogo strašnije nego pre.
Sad mislim da je grozno tamo nema više života.
Η Μπογιάννα, ο Μιλιβόγε και όλα τα υπόλοιπα παιδιά μένουν με τις οικογένειές τους σε ένα συγκρότημα 6 πολυκατοικιών στο κέντρο της Πρίστινα. Σύνολο 156 άνθρωποι. Οι στιβαγμένοι αμόσακοι του στρατού, το σειρματόπλεγμα, οι Βρετανοί φρουροί, κάνουν την κεντρική είσοδο να φαίνεται από πολύ μακριά. Με επικεφαλή στο διοικητή του ελληνικού τάγματος που στρατοπεδεύει στο Ουρόσεβατς, ένας λόγος εισέρχεται στον σερβικό τομέα της διχοτομημένης πόλης του Κωσοβάρη του Βορρά και καταλαμβάνει θέση σε κεντρικά περάσματα. Είναι η τρίτη φορά μέσα στους 2 τελευταίους μήνες που η διοίκηση της ΚΕΙΦΟΡ ζητεί ελληνική παρουσία στην εκρηκτική ζώνη της Μητρόβιτσα, της επόμενης, μετά το Βερολίνο και τη Λευκοσία, διαιρεμένης πόλης της Ευρώπης. Αυτό το συμπαγές σερβικό κομμάτι του Κωσοβάρικου Βορρά διασχίζει 2 φορές τη μέρα το παλιό Ιουγκοσλάβικο τρένο που ξεκινά από την καρδιά του Κωσυφοπεδίου, το Κωσοβοπόλje. Η διαδρομή είναι δύσκολη και επικίνδυνη. Το τρένο έχει δεχτεί πυρά, πολλά από τα τζάμια του έχουν σπάσει από τις πέτρες. Η σημαία στη στολή δείχνει τη χώρα που έχει αναλάβει τη δύσκολη αποστολή της συνοδείας του τρένου, η Ελλάδα.
Svakog dana napadaju. I tako nemamo prevoz često. Doktore nemamo ništa.
I rođena i udata i decu podižem i živim, ali dovde je.
Kako je situacija?
Nikakva. Kakva je situacija? Legnem, dignem se ovako napeta.
Κατά την προσέγγιση στη Μητρόβιτσα, ενώ έχουμε φτάσει στο σταθμό, πέφτουν μερικοί πυροβολισμοί απέναντι και το τρένο σταματάει. Κατεβαίνει μια ομάδα αναγνωρίσεως από εμάς 3 ατόμων. Με διαταγή μπαίνουμε όλοι κατευθείαν μέσα στο τρένο, πιστοχωρούμε κατά 200 μέτρα. Σταματάει το τρένο, ξανά με διαταγή κατεβαίνουμε κάτω και κάνουμε περιμετρική άμυνα. 4 από εδώ και 4 από εκεί.
Οι γονείς στην Ελλάδα ξέρουν ότι ήσουν σε κυβερνομολόγιο.
Όχι, δεν το ξέρουν, όχι. Δεν τα λέω αυτά. Όταν γυρίσουμε το καλό θα τα πούμε.
9 μήνες μετά την ανάπτυξη των νατοικών δυνάμεων στο Κόσοβο, η διαχωριστική γραμμή του μίσους δεν ήταν ποτέ περισσότερο βαθιά.
From the foyer of the House of Commons, Mike Duffy live. Sitting in, Graham Richardson.
But I want to be joined now. We're joined now by retired Major General Lewis Mackenzie. And Mr. Mackenzie, that I appreciate it. It's sort of a sketch, but boy, you get into the history of this region and it's something else. Talk to me a bit about what's happening on the streets of Belgrade today and why you think that's happening.
Well, Graham, not necessarily justifiable, but bearing in mind the characteristics of what's been going on over there for the last 15 years, not surprising, because we have a situation. Let's take an analogy. If Israel was told tomorrow they couldn't go near Jerusalem, that they'd lost their sort of the focus, the center of gravity of their soul, there'd be riots, I would imagine, in Israel. Well, 2 days ago, Serbia lost its equivalent of Jerusalem. It lost Kosovo. It's very questionable how legal that was, in that the leaders of the majority of the world's population haven't agreed to recognize Kosovo. I'm talking about China, India, Argentina, Spain, Russia. So those that have recognized, 20 out of the 192 nations in the United Nations isn't exactly a quorum. And I think myself, having covered the bombing campaign when I was in Belgrade for CTV along with Tom Clark, the attack on the American embassy today was undoubtedly an attack on Madeleine Albright, who is just the devil incarnate as far as the Serbs are concerned, because she bought into the setup at the Ratchik massacre, which was a staged event by the KLA, and that actually ended up dictating Rambouillet and the NATO bombing campaign, which according to at least 50% of international lawyers, was illegal also. So there's a lot of pent-up emotion over there right now.
I can see that, and I want to ask about there have been questions about why Canada has hesitated. Are you suggesting there's a right and a wrong here in terms of recognition of Kosovo, and Canada is so far on the right side of this?
Well, I would suggest that. I would say that, yes. I mean, in the case of China, think of Nepal. In the case of Russia, think of Chechnya. In the case of Russia, Chechnya. In the case of Spain, think of the Basques. In the case of India, think of Kashmir. The Palestinians are already talking about declaring themselves independent. A couple of days ago, I predicted, unfortunately, what seems to be coming to pass. The northern part of Kosovo, from Mitrovica up, where the 156 monasteries used to be before they were burnt by the Kosovars during the last few years, they're forming a parallel government. They'll probably secede from Kosovo. How ironic is that? And join Mother Serbia. The Republic of Srpska in Bosnia, which I'm quite familiar with after the Dayton Accord, they're meeting now in Banja Luka, as I understand it, to declare independence from Bosnia. So welcome to the domino effect.
Yeah, I was going to ask that. This move and the recognition by significant powers, I appreciate what you're saying, that it's not the whole world, but significant powers have recognized Kosovo. That is having a domino effect, and other groups or other nations, as they see themselves, will start to do the same thing?
And the majority of Canadians genuflect in the direction of Manhattan every day because they trust the United Nations. Well, Canadians should understand Resolution 1244 recognizes Kosovo as part of Serbia and does not recognize the independence, and in fact has pulled its mission out, is pulling it out to be replaced by the European Union. This is a messy thing, and quite frankly, what's left of Kosovo after the northern chunk goes is not sustainable. So guess what? 2 days ago, when the Kosovars were celebrating their independence, they didn't wave their own flag. They waved the flag of Albania. They will be joining Albania and Greater Albania and giving themselves access to the sea. So this is probably the greatest domino effect in my lifetime.
Is this... I'm reluctant to ask you to characterize something on the fly, but is this pardon the phrase, a one-off, or does this say something larger? Are we going to be talking about Serbia now for many months, given what's happened today?
I don't think so. I think there's some steam being let off. I don't think the government probably intended this. There's all kinds of suspicion the police didn't intervene fast enough. But the fact is, this was a government called for demonstration. I would imagine some of them got carried away. Doesn't surprise me. It's a shame, because people are going to say, oh, there go the Serbs again, doing this. Well, it's been probably one of the worst days, if not the worst day in the life of any Serb who's living today, when it happened 2 days ago, the independence.
Lewis Mackenzie, appreciate your perspective on a very complicated part of the world. Thanks for being with us today.
My pleasure, Graham.
Syria actually had a significant wheat surplus, and the people were very well fed in Syria before the war. We wanted to take the wheat away to cause famine. The idea was that by stealing the oil and the gas, we would be able to shut down the transportation system, and at the same time, during the Syrian winters, we could freeze to death the Syrian civilian population, which facilitated the movement of Islamic terrorists from 100 countries. One of the things that they knew when they arrived is that they were lawfully entitled to murder the husbands, and then they could possess and own their wives and their children. And they did it in vast numbers. And so there was a campaign of rape. It was an organized campaign of rape.
قال الرب لتلاميذه بهذا أوصيكم أن يحب بعضكم بعضا. إن كان العالم يبغضكم فاعلموا أنه قد أبغضني قبلكم. لو كنتم من العالم لكان العالم يحب خاصته، لكن لأنكم لستم من العالم بل أنا اخترتكم من العالم، لأجل هذا يبغضكم العالم. اذكروا الكلام الذي قلته لكم، ليس عبد أعظم من سيدي. إن كانوا اضطهدوني فسيضطهدونكم أنتم أيضا، وإن كانوا حفظوا كلامي فسيحفظون كلامكم أيضا. وإنما سيفعلون بكم هذا كله من أجل اسمي، لأنهم لم يعرفوا الذي أرسلني. لو لم آت وأكلمهم لم تكن لهم خطيئة، وأما الآن فليس لهم حجة في خطيئتهم. من يبغضني يبغض أبي أيضا. لو لم أعمل بينهم أعمالا لم يعملها آخر لم تكن لهم خطيئة. أما الآن فقد رأوا وأبغضوني أنا وأبي، ولكن ذلك لتتم الكلمة المكتوبة في ناموسهم، إنهم أبغضوني بلا سبب. ومتى جاء المعزي الذي أرسله إليكم من عند الآب، روح الحق الذي من الآب ينبثق، فهو يشهد لي وأنتم أيضا تشهدون، لأنكم معي منذ الابتداء. قد كلمتكم بهذا لكي لا تشكوا، فإنهم سيخرجونكم من المجامع، بل تأتي ساعة يظن فيها كل من يقتلكم أنه يقدم عبادة لله